Check, 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 1, 2. Merci d'être là pour cette dernière après-midi des grands débats du MAMA. C'est le Live Summit, le deuxième que nous faisons. Nous avons commencé l'an dernier. Il y a une bonne réponse du public et des professionnels, donc on a décidé de remettre ça. Et les bonnes choses ne venant jamais seules, nous avons demandé de nouveau à Gordon Masson, mon vieux, si je puis dire, collègue d'il y a une vingtaine d'années, de venir modérer les deux sessions que vous allez avoir. La première est consacrée à l'état des lieux du secteur du live et la deuxième sera consacrée à l'éco-compatibilité de l'industrie de la musique live. Voilà, donc sur ces mots, je vais vous laisser avec les... comment pourrais-je dire, l'accent très original de Gordon, qui est écossais. Donc, bonne chance à vous si vous essayez de comprendre l'anglais.
Apologies, I am Scottish, yes. But London cordial, that's all I'm going to say. Welcome, everyone. Before we start, I want to find out who you are before I introduce my guests. So, do we have any promoters in the room? No. Any agents? Okay. Any festival organizers? Excellent. Any ticketing companies? Nope. Any artists in the room? Excellent. This is all about you. And I always have to ask, are there any lawyers in the room? Oh, there's one. No. We've got to be careful what we say. Oh, she's just gone out the door, so it's fine. So I'm going to get you all to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got into the business. Can we start with Stéphane?
En français, je suis donc Stéphane, je dirige le festival Les Suds à Arles, qui est un festival de musique du monde qui se déroule, comme son nom l'indique, à Arles, dans le sud de la France, depuis maintenant 30 ans. Je prépare la 31e édition. Voilà, je suis également président du syndicat des musiques actuelles, qui est un syndicat de filière qui compte 600 adhérents, 600 entreprises qui œuvrent à la fois dans le live et dans le phono. On a 150 festivals, 150 producteurs, 150 salles et 150 labels, radios, centres de formation. Voilà comment je suis venu dans le business, eh bien, par hasard. Il y a plus de 20 ans maintenant, où j'étais déjà impliqué dans l'administration de projets culturels. Et j'ai franchi le pas de la musique vivante en 2004 pour rejoindre le festival que je dirige aujourd'hui.
Rick, who the hell are you and why?
Merci. So I'm Rick Salmon. I'm Chief Growth Officer at a company called ATC Group. We are a public company based in the UK. We have offices in London and a small office in Paris, actually, New York, Los Angeles, and Copenhagen.
Glasgow.
And Glasgow, yes, sorry, I should read, yeah, and Glasgow. We've got there's kind of three main divisions to the company. A management company, we manage about 135 artists. At the kind of top end of the scale, the guys from Radiohead, Nick Cave, PJ Harvey, Bring Me the Horizon, those kind of more mature artists, and then obviously a load of mid-tier artists, and then a large number of developing artists as well. We also have a live agency that looks after about 1,000 artists called Rome, and a merch company called Sandbag, which looks after about 350 artists. So about 1,500 artists across the whole group that we represent or touch on or work with. And we're also actually, funnily enough, a live promoter. So the business has grown a huge amount over the last. I've been there for 11 years. I'm one of the shareholders and partners. The management company started about 25 years ago, so it's been a long, slow growing over the last 2 or 3 decades. I've been in the industry my whole career. It was my 50th birthday last week. So I've been in the industry for 30 years this year. I suppose the first half of my career essentially was in record labels. I was an A&R guy at various independents, and then also I ran the international department at Warner's, and I worked at Sony as well. And then the last half of my career in broadly in management, and now what we're doing at ATC.
Excellent. Follow that, Armel.
Bonjour, je vais parler anglais avec mes collègues à côté. Hi everybody, Armel Campagna. I'm 20 years in the business. I did 5 years at an independent promoter, Gérard Drouot Productions. And then in 2009, we started the French Live Nation office. We were 4 at the time, and now we're 140, 15 years after. I'm a promoter, so I'll work with the Gracie Abrams, the 21 Pirates of this world, but also smaller acts. I have actually a Trabendo show tonight with 643 people with Jesse Murph. I'm also doing some French acts, Dave Guetta, DJ Snake, and I run the festival division, which in France is mostly Main Square Festival that I run since 2011. Lollapalooza in Paris, and we co-promote festivals also with Brunch Electronic, for example. I'm very happy to be here to share those multiple experiences with you guys. Thanks.
Anna.
Thank you. My name is Anna Scholand. I am based in Stockholm, Sweden. I work for Legends Global. We just changed name to Legends Global, so I have to remind myself the whole time. But this was happening last week. It is the new name of ASM Global, which is a company that manages and runs venues all over the world. In Europe, AO Arena in Manchester, Wembley Arena in London, and my responsibility is Europe outside of the UK. So I do programming, sports and music for Strawberry Arena, 55,000 cap stadium, 3 Arena, a 40,000 cap stadium, Avicii Arena, which is our version of the Bercy, I guess. And I've been with the company for 2 years. Before that, I spent 24 years at Live Nation as the head promoter for Live Nation in Sweden. I also did a stint in Central and Eastern Europe as the head of operations for Live Nation. I've promoted anything from small acts to big acts in mainly Scandinavia, Russia, Eastern Europe, and yeah, all the way down to Turkey, actually. So I ended up in the business. I've been in the business my whole life, actually. I started when I was 14 years in a cultural house, non-profit music organization. I stood in the cloakroom and to see the shows for free. And I decided then that this is all I wanted to do. So started with Live Nation when I was 19. Had a crew company before that rented out staff to them. That's how I ended up. It wasn't Live Nation then. It took 10 years after that until it became Live Nation. It was Sweden's biggest promoter, EMA Telstar then. So that's my background, and I pretty much live for this.
Great. So we're going to leave about 10-15 minutes at the end for questions. However, if we're speaking and we upset somebody or you've got some burning question, please wave at me and we can bring a microphone to you. But otherwise, a couple of minutes at the end, like I said. So let's start with how is the business? How was 2025 for everybody? Let's start with Stefan.
Si on parle du festival, c'était une excellente édition du festival. On a organisé la 30e édition en juillet dernier. On rassemble 42 000 spectateurs sur l'ensemble de nos scènes. Le festival dure 7 jours. On s'est recentré sur notre cœur de cible, je dirais, depuis quelques années, en renonçant à programmer des grandes têtes d'affiche pour réaffirmer l'identité du festival. C'est une stratégie qui, je crois, est payante, puisqu'on a établi un nouveau record cette année. Donc voilà, de ce point de vue, du point de vue de la fréquentation, du point de vue des retombées presse, médiatiques, des retombées professionnelles aussi, le bilan est positif. Du point de vue économique, c'est beaucoup plus compliqué. Ce qui veut dire que les recettes d'un festival historique comme le nôtre, enfin historique, ancien comme le nôtre, est à questionner, puisque malgré le succès public, médiatique, professionnel, on ne rencontre pas forcément le succès économique. Donc voilà, une première manière dont on peut de répondre, c'est celle-ci, et c'est un constat qui est partagé par l'ensemble, ou en tout cas beaucoup des festivals indépendants que l'on peut représenter au niveau du SMA, à savoir que le break, le seuil de rentabilité des festivals qui était de 90-92% il y a encore une dizaine d'années, eh bien, il n'a cessé de remonter jusqu'à atteindre parfois 100 et même au-delà de 100%. Donc, un festival qui fait le plein ne va pas nécessairement équilibrer ses comptes, ce qui peut remettre en question la pérennité de l'action. Ça, c'est pour une première réponse, et c'est celle-ci. Donc, c'est toujours, si vous voulez, et globalement, on le voit, et les chiffres le montrent, on est dans une séquence très particulière où le live se porte bien si on considère la création de valeur. C'est-à-dire que la billetterie n'a jamais été aussi haute, la fréquentation n'a jamais été aussi haute, on n'a jamais vendu autant de billets sur une année. Pour autant, si on regarde de l'autre côté, c'est-à-dire du côté des organisateurs, il y a une grande paupérisation, une grande fragilisation de tout un pan du secteur des musiques vivantes.
Rick, how's your year been? How do you think the industry is at the moment?
So I suppose you can answer that question in kind of two ways. How's the year been as an observer of the industry, and then I suppose how's the year been for us as a business kind of within that? And the answers aren't necessarily, I suppose, the same. I'm sure, like many of us, and like you were saying, Anna, you know, we're so privileged to work in this industry, and I honestly, for 30 years, there's not been a single day when you just don't feel incredibly fortunate to work in this amazing industry. But it's changed so much, and it continues to change so rapidly. So I suppose as an observation of the industry, I'm kind of conflicted, because in some ways it's one of the most exciting eras I think the industry's ever been through, in so many ways and for so many different reasons. But at the same time, it is more challenging and more difficult and more complex than it's ever been. And maybe one doesn't exist, maybe one can't exist without the other, right? Maybe it has to be complex for it to be exciting and dynamic. Maybe that's meant to be. But it's really hard work for a lot of people. People are struggling to survive. People are, struggling to pay their rent. Bands are struggling to go on tour. Yet at the same time, we're seeing enormous success everywhere we look in the industry, and at the top end of the spectrum, there seems to be enormous amounts of money being made. So it's a complex landscape and it's a complex picture, but fundamentally I adore this industry. I'm incredibly positive about where it's going and what the opportunities can be. And then very briefly, as a business, we feel quite fortunate. We're one of those companies that have been around long enough. We're getting to be a size that's big enough now to kind of withstand some of the fluctuations. We've diversified into so many different areas of the industry, so management, live touring, promotions, and merch and e-commerce, that we have a very diverse, suite of services. So it's exciting from that perspective, because of course we believe that's the kind of direction of travel as representatives of artists, where you have to deliver a huge, very wide range of services. But so we're in a really exciting place, and the company's probably in the best position it's ever been. But it's incredibly hard. The margins are incredibly tight, and it's really hard for the artists that we work with. So I'm both extremely positive, but with a tinge of kind of dark cloud over it.
Okay. Armel?
Yes, you said it very well. It's a very, very wide questions to answer, to be honest. It's very, very strong as new business coming, like obviously the streaming platforms, the TikTok of this world, the relationship that artists have with fans, which is way more direct than before, made genre that we never had 10 years ago, like reggaeton. You see Bad Bunny selling out stadiums everywhere. The K-pop of this world that were not here 10 years ago, that kind of changed also the landscape of how music is consumed, how how an artist can do 300 in Paris 18 months ago, and then do 30,000 at Rock on Seine. I promote Chaperone. I did Chapel first ever show, 300. It was not even sold out in a second. I was with the label. I was like, she's the next Gaga, and we saw the insane talent that she had. But in the meantime, we were supposed to do the normal scenario, which is, hey, let's do 1,500. Then we do Olympia 3,000. Maybe we'll do a Zenith or an Accor. No, straight up to headline Rock on Seine 30,000. That's something that is completely disrupting how we used to work and how we used to manage career here. You know, like we were to do like step by step by step. You do the touring and then you do the festivals. You open your fan base on festivals and then you hopefully you do the bigger step. It's just going faster than ever. We're kind of tracking down to follow that rhythm. So many shows do very well. The bigger show of this world, we all see the stadiums and the arenas being packed. It is harder for the smaller acts. So it's also on us to make sure that we put this act in the correct environment. We use all the festival of this world, independent, non-independent. The reality is we use the festival of this world to make sure that those new artists have a platform that sometimes label cannot push them. And that's also very, very important. On the festival side, because I can have the two hats here, it is harder. I agree, it is harder. The production costs have insanely increased post-COVID and post the Olympics also. Some of the suppliers that we used to have for festivals, they discovered that, hey, maybe if I do a sports event or I do a private fashion event, I can get more money than the festival promoters are giving me. So it is increasing. The break-even to make an event safe on the budget is harder. But again, some festivals always do good. If you're very strong locally with your local suppliers, local CTOs, and if you really understand what your fans are really wanting on the territory you're in, your festival can survive. Whether you have to adapt, maybe it's not 40,000, maybe it's not 50,000 anymore, maybe you scale it down, maybe you don't do 5 days and you do 3 days, because I think there is an adaptation to make, and that targets everybody. We saw in the US, first year that the US shut down more festivals than they create. We saw in the UK many festivals being shut down. It's not the end of the festival world, because that entire landscape needs festival, and it's crucial. We need to keep how it's the only way for people to be curious, to discover new genre of music. It's really critical, but it is a harder business on the festival side. Right now, the vibe for the youth is more the concert going with your friend. Sometimes they go to a concert just because they know one song. Would they take 10 hours on a festival to have one song? No. So we need to make sure that we have our festival projects appealing enough so they still want to be curious. They want to discover new stuff. And that's also a storytelling that we need to do. But overall, I think 25 was a good year, and 26 is leading towards a strong year. We saw many festival French announcements last week. We've never had that many headliners announced that early, like the Katy Perry of this world, the Nick Cave of this world, the Orelsan, obviously. So many festivals in France have announced in October, which normally we do end of November, December. So there is still talent out there that gets the value of festival and want to play. So big question. I'm not sure I get all the checkbox here, but a lot of stuff to say.
And is France growing? Because when I see international acts who go on tour, they maybe play for like 5 dates in the UK, 8 dates in Germany, 1 date. They play Paris, and that's it. Is that a problem, or is that something that's going to change, do you think, that they might play more than 1 date in France?
You mean on the touring side or festival side?
Touring side, yeah.
It's changing. Venues in Lyon, like LDLC, that opened, that is very, very well done. And us as promoter, we're trying to get them outside of Paris. There's a world outside of Paris. Yeah. And actually, we have very good results when we get those artists outside of Paris. France there's a money issue compared to the rest of Europe. We don't have the same ticket price, and we fight to get low ticket price, to be honest, because there's so many shows out there. There's so many cultural aspects of France as a DNA thing that A show, you take the same show, it's going to be €100 in Germany and 65 here. So obviously on the money side for an artist, and as Rick said, it costs more money to get on the road, to take the gear, to take the freight. So sometimes there is the economical aspect of, hey, I'm just going to do Paris because I can't miss Paris, and I'll do 3 shows in Germany. But we're trying to do more.
Do you mind, because Anna, you're going next, but yeah, just a piece on that. I mean, again, you spoke super well about that. I totally agree with everything you said. Your point about Chapel Roan, congrats. How long was it between that kind of first 300 cap show and the 30,000 thing?
18 to 22 months.
Crazy. So this is fascinating. So here's an interesting. So this is not me disagreeing. I totally disagree. I totally agree with you. But there's a different way of thinking about this. So for those of you that are artists or managers or or agents perhaps rather than promoters, seeing it from a slightly different angle, there is a general trend. I think this is a global trend. So I'm not speaking necessarily for France, but I believe this is global, where the time it takes for an artist to develop from their kind of first release or first kind of, first few kind of small cap shows, through to a kind of what would be described as kind of public notoriety, which I know is a very fluid and kind of nebulous thing. But so to give you an example, and there's a point at the end of this, by the way. To give you an example, Billboard every year, the Grammys every year have a one category out of like the 400 categories they have, but one category that is Best New Artist. And every year there are 10 nominations. And 10 years ago, the length of the period of time, the number of years that it took for the average for the 10 nominees from their first release to public notoriety was 3 years. That was 10 years ago. This year, and actually Chapel Roan was one of the nominees, bizarrely, this year, of the 10 nominees, do you know the average time from their first release to this nomination and public notoriety? 9.8 years. So nearly 10 years it's taking the average artist now, as opposed to 3 years ago. And this is a stat, you can find it online, I didn't make it up. In comparison to 10 years ago, 3 years for an artist to develop from nothing to public notoriety, now 10 years on average. So I know that's only a Grammy category, but I think it's indicative of a trend. So, look, I'm not going to be the doom and gloom person on this panel because I'm always glasses horribly half full, 3/4 full. But it's really difficult for an artist and a manager and the people that are supporting that artist in their growth, and frankly promoters. I mean, luckily one comes along where it's 18 months from that, but promoters supporting artists for years and years until they get to a certain point. The investment, financial investment, time, energy, emotion, it is just overwhelmingly hard. And and again, that artist has got to pay their rent for those 10 years until they get to a position where they're making money. So, just an interesting observation, not to disagree, because I know that, and she is an exception. But there's also this crazy dichotomy, right? We're now getting to a place where an artist can go from a low level to that level incredibly quickly in certain markets. That does exist because of a virality moment or anything. Anyway, it was just a point I wanted to make as a reference. Yeah.
So Anna, 2 questions to you. Firstly, how's the year been for you? But then, in Sweden in particular, are there any artists? Because I think post-COVID, what we saw was lots of homegrown artists becoming superstars in their own countries, kind of thing. Has that happened? But first, how's the year been?
Well, I'm super positive, I have to say. I think we're in an amazing place, and of course there are struggles, and I'm not saying that there is independent venues, independent festivals, that struggles, and big festivals that are struggling. From my side, where I'm looking at it from the venue side, and I've been sitting on panels with you guys forever, and everybody's asking, who's the next stadium? What's going to happen when Bruce Springsteen and Metallica stops touring? We have who's going to take that role? We're not going to see any big acts anymore. Is this an emergency? No, it's not an emergency, because we see now we have the Billie Eilishes and the Sabrina Carpenters and the Chapel Roans and you just name it. We're doing I have 3 sold-out weekend shows in 55,000 cap in Stockholm next year, in a city of 1 million people. So, you know, what we're seeing is, yes, it's harder to break through. It's harder to, the digital, obviously I come from Spotify land, so, you know, we are all very, you know, we don't listen to anything else. But it's all, there's so much out there that it's harder to break through and make yourself heard. But once you do, it's also very quick to get to a new level. We used to see in Sweden that maybe 1 or 2 acts a year could do multiple shows in the venue they were booked. Multiple arenas, you know, 2 nights in an arena or 2 nights in a stadium. That was only Metallica and Bruce Springsteen, possibly Iron Maiden, because, you know, we're old rockers back there in Sweden. But now, you know, it's everything. We have 2 Bad Bunny sold out shows, 55,000, and 26,000 of those people coming from Spain. Because Spain sold out all their stadiums, and then we released the second show 4 hours after Spain was completely sold out, and we were the only one that released a second show that late because we weren't planning it, and suddenly 26,000 people from Spain are going to Stockholm. And so I think, you know, those kind of things are what I'm seeing, and we are an exception when it comes to that, being that kind of market. But, you know, we see up in little Scandinavia, we had Taylor Swift 2 years ago, last year maybe, 24. Taylor Swift, the same thing, 11,000 people from the US flew in. It's cheaper for them to fly to Sweden, buy a PL1 ticket there, and see the show, and it's easier for them to get the access. So, you know, I think what we're seeing is a trend where people do more shows in one city and that you travel to go to the events. And I think that's, you know, that's really a cool thing to see all these multiple shows with young acts, not to mention young female acts. You know, I want to put that out there as well, because that's something that we never, you know, we were sitting there talking 10 years ago, why are there no female headliners? I mean, that's not the case anymore. We have plenty of great female headliners, and they're young, and they're cool, and they're independent, and so I think that's something to really focus on as well.
From a logistical point of view, if you've got all those people coming in from Spain, are you going to have to put lots of things in Spanish around the venues and stuff?
No. I mean, it's so cool. You know, the whole city lives up, and I think that's a challenge that we all have to work with when we're talking about festival support, or, you know, how the communities and the authorities and the cities support events. You know, you have to see the big picture. You have to see what the events bring into, not only to in economy in terms of taxes and VAT and those sort of things, but also first, you know, the first job for people. You know, if you're looking at a big venue, the people cleaning in the kiosks and the, you know, selling the beer, there's so many people, security, that gets their first job working in an event. And I think, you know, I can't stress enough how important it is for a small city like Stockholm with 1 million people. We have 10 million people in Sweden. And last year, you know, we sold 400,000 tickets to Bruce Springsteen. Wow. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a pretty big percentage. And so, you know, it really makes a difference for the city. Your other question was local artists.
Yeah, domestic talent, yeah.
Yes, and again, you know, I'm lucky. Sweden, I always say, when I promoted Lollapalooza in Stockholm before, and I always said that if you go to Lollapalooza anywhere in the world, there's likely that you'll see a Swedish artist on stage. You'll go to Lollapalooza Chile or, you know, wherever. You'll see 1, 2, sometimes 3, sometimes a headliner, you know. And if you compare to a lot of other markets, you don't see that. I mean, I don't mean to call out names, but, you know, mention 5 Austrian artists. Not super easy. You know, we did this exercise yesterday at a panel, and we were talking about Germany, you know, and the size of Germany, looking at the size of Sweden, the number of high-profile acts that we've produced in Sweden is really, really high. So we've always had that. But we see now an incredible increase of it. Sara Larsson is a great example. She has been on the Swedish market since she was 10 years old, but she's never had that huge international bump. And she's selling out every arena now. She's selling out everything. We don't have. There's not a single ticket to the Sara Larsson show in November in Avicii Arena. And it used to be the other way around. So we see a lot of strong talent. We also had in March the Swedish band Kent, sings in Swedish. They stopped playing together 10 years ago, did a reunion, sold out 6 nights times 40,000 tickets. Wow. In Stockholm in March. So that's another thing. And that's also something for us. We have roofs on our stadiums. Which you kind of have to if you're up in, you don't have to, but we have roofs on both of our stadiums in Stockholm because it's fucking cold. And it rains and it's not nice. And also it doesn't get dark in the summer. Yeah. So we now have a stadium season that goes much longer. We used to be stadium season was June till August. Now we had Taylor Swift 3 shows in May, Beyonce's world premiere, early May. I have holds now in April, and the Kent shows was in March. So we've increased the stadium season by 2-3 months, which obviously makes a huge difference for the whole industry. So I'm quite positive, to be honest.
And I mean, really well said. And the demand seems to be insatiable, right? It's like it's what's so cool, I guess, is to your point about the fact that 10 years ago everyone was doom mongering. For sure, I remember it so well. Even 5 years ago, people saying who are going to be the next festival headliners. It's bizarre how quickly that's changed since just prior to COVID, right? It seems to have accelerated. I guess the cool thing is, to your point about Spotify, again, this kind of natural kind of negativity that it kind of kills and sucks the culture out of and the art out of music. Yet, arguably, the last 3 years or so, the world over, global tours have been front page news, as in literally Oasis and these huge kind of mainstream stories that seem to have just really captured the zeitgeist. It is amazing. Something's working.
At the top end, obviously everything's going better than ever. However, what about at the other end? What are the kind of, Stéphane, I'll come to you. What are the biggest kind of challenges for the business?
C'est très intéressant, ce point de vue est très intéressant. Pardon. Comme je le disais en introduction, finalement, c'est vrai que la création de valeur n'a jamais été aussi haute dans le milieu de la musique et de la musique vivante en particulier. La question qui se pose derrière, c'est la répartition de cette valeur. Et on le voit dans les exemples qui sont donnés. Comment est-ce que on survit face à ces rouleaux compresseurs? Comment est-ce qu'on survit lorsqu'on est indépendant et qu'on cherche à promouvoir la diversité culturelle face à ce modèle qui tend à s'imposer vers plus de gigantisme et vers plus de rapidité? Vous l'avez très bien dit tout à l'heure, un artiste au top on peut passer de 300 à 30 000 en un an. Quid des échelons intermédiaires? Que deviennent-ils ces échelons qui servaient à construire une carrière, à construire un rapport au public autrement? Je ne suis pas là en train de dire c'était mieux avant. Je dis simplement que la modification de ce système amène une plus grande fragilité sur une grande partie de l'écosystème, des artistes, des organisateurs, des médias prescripteurs, etc. Donc il y a tout un pan de la filière qui est extrêmement fragilisé par cette transformation de l'activité économique. Et il est de plus en plus difficile de trouver des outils de régulation pour préserver l'ensemble de la diversité. Alors, qu'elle soit artistique, qu'elle soit dans les formes, c'est-à-dire que le stade ne peut être la forme ultime de la manière qu'on a de présenter un artiste face au public. On ne peut pas se contenter de ça. On ne peut pas non plus faire l'économie de la réflexion autour de la soutenabilité environnementale de ces modèles et de cette course au gigantisme. Donc voilà, comment est-ce qu'on arrive à faire coexister ces différents modèles? Comment est-ce qu'on arrive à faire coexister le petit à côté du gros? La musique, c'est quand même l'un des secteurs, certainement, où il y a cette concurrence entre les très petits et les très gros. comment est-ce qu'on arrive à de quels outils dispose-t-on pour pouvoir faire en sorte que cette pluralité d'opérateurs, cette pluralité d'artistes continue d'exister, que les artistes continuent de trouver leur public, que les festivals, les salles indépendantes, les petites salles continuent de pouvoir jouer leur rôle aussi de structuration de toute la filière. Voilà, c'est extrêmement important parce que sinon, effectivement, on a parlé de Paris, on a parlé de Lyon, mais derrière, en France, on a aussi la chance d'avoir un maillage territorial incroyable, extraordinaire. Il y a des salles, des festivals dans tous les territoires. Donc chacun peut avoir accès à une offre culturelle. Comment est-ce qu'on arrive à préserver ça lorsque on voit qu'il y a un phénomène de concentration qui amène de plus en plus de public vers des centres urbains, vers des métropoles, vers des grandes villes, voilà, ou alors même carrément vers l'étranger lorsque on est plus attractif parce que nos billets ne sont pas encore soumis à une billetterie dynamique et on se retrouve à plafonner, à rester accessible. Et donc c'est plus intéressant pour un spectateur américain de prendre un billet d'avion, pour venir voir Beyoncé au stade Vélodrome à Marseille. Ça lui coûtera moins cher que d'acheter son billet pour aller la voir aux États-Unis. Donc ça pose malgré tout question. Et j'ai envie de dire que ce modèle existe. C'est une chose, c'est un fait, il est là et je n'ai même pas à le juger. Simplement, j'interroge notre capacité à laisser la place à l'ensemble des acteurs pour qu'on continue d'avoir une diversité de l'expression.
Oui. I'll jump in on that because I totally agree with you, but I don't think the two things are a contradiction. I think that's what I was trying to get to a little bit when we were talking about, that we have to show the value of the whole industry. And I think COVID really taught us, at least in my market, that we as an industry have been really bad at speaking about ourselves and showing the worth, the financial worth that we bring, the social worth that we bring, better at showing the social worth, but not the financial benefits. And, it shouldn't be, I think that showing the way that the stadiums and the big festivals and the arena shows and the massive touring, what that brings to the market should be then the city, the country, that it should be in their interest to realize that the small stuff is needed to grow that. You're not going to get anywhere if you're not getting the growth and if you're not bringing it up. But I think the question is, whose responsibility is it to make sure that happens? I think we need more systems. We need more support. We need more support for independent festivals and artists. It used to be when I was 20, you get actual support as a band to go out and play. You could, get tour support basically from the cultural ministry of Sweden. That support now is nothing compared to what it used to be. And I think that's pretty same for all European countries. It goes down, 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 down. And we're not spending enough money on that because the cultural value and the financial value cannot be, it's totally underestimated what it brings to society. So I think we need to find ways where some of the money that we all, that you bring in on the big shows to the cities, the city and the countries should invest back into the sector.
Can I throw a couple of controversial points in?
Well, I was going to say to you, if I'm a new artist and I come to you and say, Rick, stick with me, in 9.8 years, I'm going to be the shit.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah.
And all the while having to pay more people to work on that artist's development because we can't rely on labels doing it anymore. So we have our own marketing teams, our own digital team. It goes on and on and on. But of course, we're not getting paid more. And an artist doesn't make any money for 5, 8,
20%
10,
of nothing is
20%
nothing.
of nothing is nothing. And when the 20% does come along, it's a tiny percentage of what you may have put in. Like it doesn't frankly work. There are so many elements of the music industry that are not fit for purpose in the modern industry. But that's probably another panel, to be honest with you.
It can be this panel,
or it can be drinks in the bar afterwards. We can talk about it. But But the controversial point I want to make, and I think you guys are both amazing at what you do. You truly are, and you work for very successful companies. But I'm gonna throw it out there just for the point of kind of debate and argument. There is no doubt that an element of what is going on in the industry is the globalization and capitalization and consolidation of major, largely American companies, and obviously Live Nation being one of them. Look, there's no doubt that it can be argued that these large organizations put a huge amount into the development of artists. That we know that that's the case. We know that a huge amount of money goes on that every year, hundreds of millions. We can, of course, argue as well that Live Nation doesn't make hardly any money out of its promotions division. It makes most of its money out of everything else it does: beverage, car parking, hot dogs, venue ownership, security, so on and so forth. But it massively changes the landscape. And some of these companies are making tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. And it disrupts the market, and it makes it very, very difficult. Now, to your point, Anna, I don't necessarily think it is just it's not government and council level that has to sort this out. I think these large organizations have to. They have to be a part of it, but of course they won't be, because they have to deliver for their shareholders. And they will not give money away if they don't have to. It's just one of those, it's just the way of the world, unfortunately. Now look, I'm not a Marxist, but I think as I get older, I probably lean more that way. But capitalism in the music industry, and actually just in America in general, is eye-wateringly bad for the creative arts. The two think they're oil and water. It doesn't work. So look, there's ways around it. Can we lobby to get large organizations? I'm not just singling out Live Nation. You could say the same of Universal. You could say the same of anyone. Is there a way of those companies truly investing back into the broader industry, not just those artists that they're trying to develop, but what that might look like? So is there some sort of levy? In the UK, as you know, Gordon, they've just introduced two things. All venues, I think, isn't it? A large percentage of venues, I forget exactly, it's only just been passed, now have to pay through 2% of it. I should find out. There's a percentage of revenues that now have to be paid through from all venues. 1%, isn't it? Yeah, 1%. To grassroots venues, to small independent venues. So that any major concert, any stadium show, any tour, any festival, 1% of its revenues has to be paid into a massive pot. It could generate, I don't know, tens of millions of pounds a year, I think. And so and no one knows quite how much it's going to generate. And so no one's really quite worked out how it's going to be distributed, which is a massive challenge in itself, which needs to be worked on now. But it's a massive positive. Let's say it's £30 million. That's a massive amount of money to be able to potentially provide tour support for developing artists and so on and so forth. There is a grant that is going to be created through the MMF. So that's important. You know, look, governments do have to chip in as well. I mean, France has been amazing. These beautiful festivals in regional France, I've done it with loads of artists, those beautiful arts festivals where you're paid quite good money and the council pay in these beautiful town squares. And they're amazing festivals and they're well run and they're beautiful. That needs to happen more the world over, because that's how we're going to find the next generation of artists, right?
Yeah, I think that levy idea is being copied elsewhere as well. So yeah. it is a positive.
In the right direction. But
Armel,
we also have the tax here in France, and obviously those bigger shows pay a lot, and thank God do, for all the smaller venues and developing artists. So these shows are important, but I think people don't realize that for 20 stadium shows, you have 1,500 other shows in a year, from 160 at the pop-up to Zenith to Olympia to Trabendo to so many clubs where most of the time you lose money. And as Rick said, labels are not there to support an artist's career. We're doing that and we're pushing, and most of the energy of our team, or most of the energy of a marketing team, are to get a new artist's name out there, to make sure they have a crowd, and building and building and building, and the festivals that we do, that's also for that. And that's a huge amount of work compared to the bigger shows that, yes, everybody sees the bigger success, but 90% of the job that we do is promoting younger acts and trying to get them to a higher level so they can actually afford a living. You don't have the promoters to do that, and I'm not saying Paris. We're saying doing tours, going to Rouen, to Lille, to Bordeaux, to Toulouse, or to smaller venues. That's also a huge part of our business that obviously it's easier to talk about the bigger shows. It's always easier to go to the bigger stuff, yes. But there's a big chunk of what we do that is also to promote younger generation, younger acts from France and from international. And we need the money that is driven on these bigger shows to also be able to do that. There is an economical scheme here that needs to be sustained. Take away 50% of this bigger show, how is the system? How is the business? How can you, hey, I'm gonna give you 25K on this show, I'm not sure you're there, but I'll do this so you can actually bring a bigger show, a lighting rig, an LED wall, so we get a big impression and we'll grow you in the French market. Who's gonna put that money otherwise? It's an investment. That's a virtuous cycle, you know. You get the money, you invest it. You get the money, you invest it. So I'm speaking for the French market. The French market is also specific, but it's a day and day grinding work. And Rick, you do that better than anybody with management, building up, investing, going outside of Paris, doing mini tours, getting onto festivals, promoting festivals that are tougher to promote for everybody. Whether you're big, small, it's the same. We all have the same problems. Artists being more expensive, production being more expensive, and kids actually wanting to go to concert rather than festival. That's where we need to be better.
If I'm a young act, or if I'm a young manager who's got a young act that wants to find, basically at the end of the day, you're the risk taker. You know, you're the one that's giving the money. Is it riskier now to take on that young act? How does that young act persuade you to become the promoter?
It's riskier if you're the actor, in my perspective or in yours?
From your perspective.
It's riskier because, again, what changed the most post-COVID is how people see the music, consume the music. They don't know albums anymore. They do playlists. They know one track, two tracks. You see at shows, it's like this, and boom, there's the track they know, they film, and it's actually getting there. So breaking a new act, building up in the market will take longer and will be a bigger investment as a risk taker. But we keep doing it every day, 10 times a day, million times a day. We do it. That's our core DNA. Before there was all the stadiums, we were all music lovers. We're music lovers. The game is to... And as Anna said, 5 years ago, we're like, who are going to be the next headliners? Hadn't we do that, building those acts up and up in the market, we would have... They needed us at some point to get to the stadium levels that is sustainable also for the scheme of the general economic. So we'll take the risk. Will it take more long? Nobody really knows, because maybe one track goes up and then it goes faster. But we will never stop taking the risk, being at the artist service, putting an artist on the road, putting as much tour as we can, putting them on festivals as much as we can so they have a shot at it. Some will not happen, and there will be a pure loss for us. Some will grow, and thankfully that's what we're trying to do as much as we can.
And I also think that, you know, that I was going to say pretty much what Armel said, but my promoting days, you know, the biggest losses were not on the big shows. You know, the margins are so small on the big shows that what you're making on those can still disappear if you do 3 or 4, you know, if you hit a really bad bump on a couple of 2,000 caps or 1,000 caps. That's where you really can lose the money, because you have the potential. You might be able to walk home. If you sell out one of those shows, you'll get, you know, 10,000 euros. That's what you can make it as most. But you can lose 50, 60,000 euros. And when you take those hits, you know, you don't need more than a couple of them until you start chipping away at what you can invest. So the big shows are important. I think the promoters invest enormously. And I can say that now, even I'm not on the promoter side, but you know, the losses and the betting that you take on artists, I think is fantastic. I don't know if it's just my feeling, but it used to be that there were cheaper tickets in the smaller segments. At least we've seen that in Sweden. You know, the sort of 2,000 cap artist or 1,500 cap artist, the tickets are now on a very high ticket price level for that specific target group. And when you have so many great acts and everything is so expensive, you know, people want to pay a high ticket price for the one Lady Gaga show or the one whatever. But if you want to see 10 really good shows in a theater and they're all close to, you know, in my market, 70 euros or things like that, it becomes too expensive. So I think that's where I'm looking at not only the industry chipping in, but also looking at how can we fix the cost of the mid-level touring. I think the venues, the touring costs, everything is more expensive now because of Brexit and everything like that. You know, that whole level is really hurting because after COVID, it's just changed too much. But the one positive thing I'll say is everything has always been in cycles, as long as I've been in this music business. You know, there are 3 years where everybody's going to festivals, and it's all about festivals, and now we're all going to do this and this and this. And then 3 years go, and then suddenly nobody wants to go to festivals. It's all about arena shows. And then it's suddenly back to festivals again. You know, so it doesn't mean that it's gone forever. I also feel that it's, you know, we overpopulate the festival market. We overpopulate some of these fields a little bit. And then there's a dip, and in a couple of years, I bet you it's going to go up again. And I think it's our responsibility as well to really work with, like you're saying, the kids. You know, we need to get people to understand how great it is to see live shows. Need to make it accessible for young people. Need to get people learning that this is the way of life. You know, that's how we started, right? You know, didn't want to do anything but go into shows.
Réagir effectivement à ce qui a été dit là. La question du risque, elle est intéressante parce qu'elle pose aussi la question enfin, si on dézoome un petit peu, on est obligé de considérer qui est prescripteur. Et dans cet écosystème où, comme l'a dit Rick, des grands groupes sont venus perturber les équilibres du marché, qui étaient des équilibres qui étaient assez précaires, finalement, qui reste prescripteur? Qui va conseiller, qui va amener le public vers tel ou tel artiste? Ce ne sont plus les médias. Les festivals l'ont été, certains le restent encore, mais le sont de moins en moins. Et donc, c'est le lien direct entre l'artiste et le public qui semble prévaloir désormais pour être prescripteur. Et dans cette chaîne, dans cette construction de chaîne de valeur, il y a bien sûr d'autres groupes qui interviennent. Spotify en est un. Comment est-ce qu'on arrive à articuler tout ça de manière à ce qu'on ait d'autres prescripteurs qui viennent rendre visible l'ensemble de l'offre culturelle? C'est bien sûr que la répartition de la richesse par la taxe est une solution, est une réponse. On l'a avec la taxe du CNM en France. En Angleterre, c'est également d'actualité, mais ça n'est pas la réponse à tout. Ça ne peut pas être la réponse à tout. On est face à une saturation de l'offre avec, en France, comme en Suède, visiblement, une extension de la période des stades et des salles de grande capacité qui, depuis le Covid, viennent désormais sur l'été. Là où, avant, on s'arrêtait. Il y avait une cohabitation, une coexistence, une cohabitation plutôt pacifique entre les festivals de l'été et les concerts en salle de grande capacité. Ça tend à être de plus en plus compliqué. Et si on lie ce phénomène avec celui que je disais précédemment, à savoir la promotion que l'artiste va vouloir faire plus naturellement de ses propres productions dans ses stades, dans ses arénas, etc., eh bien, ça met encore en plus grande difficulté les festivals et les festivals indépendants. L'autre chose sur les coûts, bien sûr qu'il faudrait réussir à réguler les coûts. En France, il y a une étude qui est parue récemment qui montre que pour un festival de musique actuelle, les coûts ont augmenté de 6% en 2024. L'inflation en 2024, elle était de 2%. Ça veut dire qu'il y a 4% de majoration de l'inflation dans la musique vivante. Ces 4%, c'est bien sûr la technique, c'est les assurances, parce que plus d'aléas climatiques, c'est l'hébergement, le transport, et c'est aussi bien sûr les cachets artistiques. Et ces cachets artistiques de tête d'affiche qui rassemblent de plus en plus de monde, qui sont devenus inaccessibles pour une bonne partie des festivals, eh bien, ils ont cette inflation, elle tire vers le haut ceux qui étaient peut-être considérés avant comme des têtes d'affiche nationales simplement. Donc il y a un effet mécanique domino sur l'ensemble de ce système, avec et c'est important de le rappeler, eh bien une césure entre les têtes d'affiche, ceux qui peuvent remplir, et puis les artistes intermédiaires et les artistes émergents. Avec du coup cette inflation des coûts qui est redoutable et qui rend difficile la rentabilité de ces événements, puisque en face, la même étude montre que les produits ne progressent que de 4%, donc il y a encore un creusement de cette rentabilité. Eh bien, comment est-ce qu'on arrive à amortir l'inflation des coûts? En augmentant les tarifs, en augmentant la jauge. Les subventions, c'est fini, elles n'augmentent plus, elles ont plutôt tendance à baisser. Et la dernière chose qui est assez redoutable et qui est plus invisible, ça va être de modifier la répartition du budget artistique au profit des têtes d'affiche qui prennent une part plus importante. On va conserver, parce qu'on a toujours autant de slots, des artistes émergents, et on sacrifie l'échelon intermédiaire. Et donc là, en sacrifiant l'échelon intermédiaire, eh bien, on sacrifie un peu l'avenir et l'investissement sur l'avenir, parce que ce sont ces artistes intermédiaires qui peuvent devenir les têtes d'affiche de demain.
We've never met before. What a very bright and lovely human being you are.
Who would have thought that would happen on a
Yeah.
music panel?
So well said. Just to join something you said with something you said, the importance of the relationship, the importance of the artist knowing who their fan is. Not that we're going to take this down the kind of the data route, but it is a really interesting subject. But we're definitely focused really heavily on how we can, literally fan by fan, literally, how we can try and make that relationship grow between the artist and a fan, because to us it seems to be the only way of moving away from the kind of the decade that we've just gone through, the Spotify kind of decade, as much as we all love the convenience of Spotify. But Ahmed, you said, you know, many young fans will come along because they know one song, and that's because they haven't yet connected with the artist. They might love the song on a playlist, but they may know nothing else about the artist, and they may not have yet gone deep enough into that artist's, you know, life and artistry to connect with them. So in a way, that's the point, isn't it? We've got to move away from that kind of passive enjoyment of music, and whatever we do, whether it's in grassroots music venues or smaller arts festivals, or by fan-to-fan engagement in the way that we connect in the earlier stages of an artist's career, we all have to do everything we can to support that bit. And if eventually an artist becomes successful and has 10 million followers on Spotify, then happy days, because at that point it's become commoditized. But in the same way that you used to literally go and sell your own records, your physical records, in a record store, you would go up, an artist would go in and say, would you like 10 of my records? And they'll say yes or no. It was literally looking people in the eye and trying to connect with them in that way. And that's, I think that's a metaphor for life generally. I think that, you know, this kind of commoditization of media and mass media and social media and everything else, it's so passive. We just sit there and we don't connect. We just literally watch, we observe, we become voyeurs. And I think what we can do with live music is connect deeply by looking people in the eye from a stage and making them cry and dance and laugh, which is a human connection that I think we've all realized is really fucking important.
Can I add something as well on the cost discussion? Because I think I come back to government support and that kind of thing. But I just want to, again, looking at the cost increase that you're talking about for touring, one big reason for that, at least in my market, is also that a lot of companies they disappeared during COVID. A lot of suppliers, you know, stagehand companies or sound, lights, transport, all of those kind of things. So the companies that are still there, they have too much work and they can charge, you know, you now have to pay to get them to do something because there's not enough suppliers in the industry. And I think that is something that we need to learn and take responsibility for, that we weren't prepared for COVID. We weren't there for the lobbying. We had to start from zero with that. And we should have had now government supporting the suppliers and the whole ecosystem of the music business it's going to be needed for 10 years. It's not about the year when there was COVID, or 2 years or 3 years. It's going to take years to get back from that. And so we are going to see a little tougher times. But I'm also thinking we'll get through that.
Yeah.
And now we're better prepared.
We are, and I think to add to that, from a manager's perspective, venue costs, of course, are going up, promoter costs are going up, marketing costs are going up, electricity bills are going up in venues, so on and so forth. But also from a touring perspective, and this is the double whammy, hotel costs and flight costs. And it's like, I mean, you all travel, I'm sure. Like, to get an artist to America now is 3 times what it would have been 5 years ago. Hotel rooms that you could have got for maybe $100, $150, and now a minimum of $300, $350 a night. And if you've got 40 people on the road, even if you've got 5, it's a huge amount of money. Flights being 3, 4, 5 times more expensive than they used to be. Artists now, I mean, this is a first world problem, but famous artists now traveling in economy rather than business class because you can't afford a business class flight. I mean, first world problem, but you know
that is a first world problem.
First world. But I'm talking about the bigger types of artists. I mean, I had a legitimate conversation with one. He should remain nameless. One of our very bigger artists, and he was like, "Nah, I don't want to. I'll just go down the back. It's a 6-hour flight." He can play to 5,000 capacity rooms the whole world over. Because he didn't want to spend 12 grand on a business class flight to New York. Like, it's a legitimate thing. Like,
And that's the same thing when you're talking about hotels. If you're looking at these big festivals, big shows that brings in hundreds of thousands of people to a city, the hotel cost will go up 200-300% during that weekend of that show. And that's where I mean that, the whole ecosystem has to pitch in. It's not only driving finances to the promoter or to the artist or to the suppliers, it's driving to hotels, to restaurants, to everything. And, they're in the same way as we try to keep ticket prices reasonable at some level and try to keep it accessible. I think everybody has a responsibility to do the same thing on hotels and food and travel. Like now, I think you're not going to a certain show because you can't find a hotel room and it's too expensive. And that's not a good thing either. So it needs to be a cooperation.
The one thing I can never get my head around is why the industry has such a shitty relationship with government. Because if you think about it, promoters, the best case scenario is you make a 3% margin. The government's making 20% on the VAT. It's like they're the ones that are making the most money from this industry. And the relationship is terrible.
And add to that withholding tax, right, which has become horrifyingly complicated since Brexit. Withholding tax in America is brutal. You have both state withholding tax and federal withholding tax. We've just done a tour settlement where we haven't received a substantial withholding tax settlement. 3 years after the tour, it's still not come back. And it's 6-figure withholding tax sum. So literally a tour that would have made 100 grand would have broken even until you wait for your withholding tax to come through. It's that kind of, it's crazy. I completely agree. I completely agree on VAT. It's the same reason that governments, I don't know if it's different in France, but in the UK, they've taken music out of the national curriculum, so you don't now have to play music or study music at all at school. It's down to the school. It's the same thing. Just there's this kind of this creep into. It's definitely a problem in America, as we know, with the liberal arts and performing arts. But it's got to be supported. Yeah.
And that's actually a way to do it as a government. In Sweden we have 25% VAT on most things you purchase, 12% on food. But we have a 6% VAT on tickets for events.
Same here.
And that's a really good way of supporting from the government. So those things are important, but they're constantly under debate to take that away. And we fight every year to make sure we keep that. So it is hard.
France is 5.5. We do have a reduced VAT rate, but we should always ask for more. The reality is taxes in France are big. Staff costs is very big compared to other countries. So when you do an offer on, let's say, a Trianon, which is very close to here, you want to be at 30 euro public price maximum. But when you factor the venue cost, the staff cost, all the taxes. You have at least 15-16% on the taxes. And then you have an artist that say, hey, we're 5 on the road, we have some gear, we're providing the backline. The next closest hotel is 175 a night for 10 square foot, like super tiny. Then you end up going at like, hey, we need to go 35, 40 euro ticket price, or there's nothing to make for you. So it's a really head-scratching moment on the cost. Local costs in France are big. The touring costs are going insanely strong, as Rick said. There's a lot of taxes here. So yeah, it's a difficult balance to fit in. So, and that ends up as, like Anna said, you want to be at 30 euro, but you end up at 37, 38, 40, which is, for a 1500 cap, is kind of in the higher range, and you're trying to avoid it, but otherwise the artist is say, I'm just gonna pass, dude. I can come in, because it doesn't work.
Do we have any questions in the room? We've got about 10 minutes left. Anybody got a question for us? No, we've solved everything. Excellent. I've got a question, though. So this year in particular, we've seen some outspoken artists being banned, or people trying to ban them from festivals, from touring, etc., etc. Is this something we should worry about, or where does the responsibility for that lie?
Yeah, I mean, we should worry about everything that's going on, and we should really work together as an industry to make sure that free speech and culture, doing your thing as an artist, is that is critical. That is not our jobs to go and let a government or somebody say you shouldn't do this or this or this. As long as it's we follow the laws, we follow the rules. But it's really important. I think free speech has always been supported by the music business, but by the music community, by the artists that stands on the stages and say what they can and using their platforms, and we should all support that in every role.
That's where festivals have such an impact on this, because several stages, several genres, and you're more under the flag than playing a hard ticket venue, and you can have artists say whatever they want in an easier way. Some are getting struggle, like we've seen this summer, which is, in my opinion, not good. Free speech is the most critical thing, but festivals have a real impact in getting a kid, younger guy, knowing other stuff and hearing those artists out that sometimes are even more open on festival, sharing stage with other acts, sharing ideas, and I think festivals have a very important role on this.
And also the audience has the opportunity to not go. As an audience of fans, that's where the democracy is with free speech. An artist says something, if the audience, if the people don't like it, that will show. But it's not our job to not provide the stages or not provide the outlets for it. Sorry.
Non, je suis complètement d'accord, c'est extrêmement inquiétant. Parce que les scènes auxquelles on assiste depuis quelques années maintenant étaient inquiétantes parce que ça procédait d'activisme de groupes isolés qui venaient essayer d'empêcher peut-être la tenue de spectacles qui ne correspondaient pas à leur vision de la société, à leur vision de... Mais là, depuis cet été, on a vu qu'un nouveau pas a été franchi avec le retrait de subventions à des festivals qui programmaient les artistes qui tenaient des propos, ou qui avaient tenu des propos qui pouvaient ou qui avaient pu heurter telle ou telle sensibilité. Et ça, c'est extrêmement inquiétant parce que le politique se substitue au juge et vient censurer une expression. Et le deuxième effet à long terme, ça va être de provoquer une autocensure. Donc il va y avoir un effet pervers dans la programmation de ces artistes qui peuvent provoquer du débat, qui peuvent provoquer de la polémique, comme ça a toujours été le cas. C'est pas nouveau que des artistes se positionnent, prennent position, et amènent du débat. Mais là, c'est la première fois que l'on voit des artistes, des organisateurs se faire pénaliser, censurer économiquement pour une programmation. Et la conséquence à moyen et long terme, je le crains, c'est que ça amène une forme d'autocensure, consciente ou inconsciente, qu'un programmateur prenne à nouveau le risque de programmer, si on parle d'artistes français, Médine, parce qu'à chaque fois que Médine fait une date, eh bien, ça provoque des remous du côté des collectivités locales, des élus, on a eu l'exemple de Kingcap cet été, voilà, qui va encore courir le risque de se voir supprimer une subvention, que ce soit conscient ou pas. Ça peut être, j'ai le choix, peut-être que je vais aller sur tel autre artiste, même sans me le formuler, même sans me le dire, parce que je sais que j'aurai aucun problème.
Rick, from the management point of view, I mean,
Oh my God, it's like it's not being filmed, is it? This. It's so complicated. We now live in a world where even to some people, when you say it's so complicated, their answer will be no, it's not, because if they have a certain political view, being a centrist isn't allowed either anymore. And so we live in an incredibly complex world. You know, out of 135 artists that we manage, we have some very vocal artists among those. Tom York and Radiohead obviously being one of them. And I won't speak because it's not right for me to do so. I certainly can't speak on their behalf, and I don't even want to translate the words and the processes that went on. But even within the band Radiohead, they debated for months and about how to word their feelings for what's going on in the world. And when they did, half the world fucking slagged them off, and half the world supported them and loved them, and and the world goes round, right? And it's so complicated. And then we've got artists that across the roster that have opposing views as well, and so it's so complicated from a manager's perspective. And actually, look, as a 50-year-old man, I've been around long enough where I've got a bit of experience, and I feel at least kind of educated enough to talk and comment and discuss with the artists that we work with. For a younger manager, they may not feel so well equipped to deal with that in the same way they may not feel equipped to deal with other more complex issues like mental health that artists go through, or addiction, and so on and so forth. They're all equally complicated, and certainly from a manager's perspective, those are burdens and responsibilities that just weigh very heavily on a young manager's or even an old manager's shoulders. So yeah, very, very, very complex. And at Petrana's point, you know, Tom York famously once said, and I'm not using this as a metaphor for this panel, but he, you know, in response to playing Israel, he famously once said, if we didn't play the countries of every regime or government that we didn't agree with, we wouldn't play in most of the world. Like, would you play in America when Donald Trump's, president? So it's art and
Donald
politics.
Trump's president?
Apparently so, yeah. So that, you know, it's a very complex landscape.
Emmanuel just reminded me. Do we have any questions? Is that a question? Yes, excellent. Tell us who you are and ask your question.
Hello, my name is David Schwartz. I'm an artisan d'art. I'm crafting electric guitars. So I have a question regarding a lover of festivals. Isn't it about also experience? When you look at a festival like Coachella, they build a whole, they build everything to keep being able to reuse it every year. When you look at the Hellfest, they do the same. And when they welcome the artists, they have a wonderful artist area with swimming pools and stuff. And when you look at a festival like Youngblood, it's all about gathering, giving an experience to people who doesn't know each other, to meet friends, what music is also for. And when you look at France today, and I understand what you mean by there's the big stadium, and the big stadium are gathering and they're open earlier and earlier, so the festivals need to announce earlier and earlier to get the money before. And the question is, isn't there, like, with all the landscape we have, a new way of seeing other little festivals in beautiful places where you can have another kind of experience and sell also the place, the landscape, the views, and engage the audience with a new place instead of only the way we always been doing so far?
Stéphane, do you want
Yes. Oui, c'est important. C'est important de dire qu'on a beaucoup parlé des difficultés, enfin j'ai beaucoup parlé des difficultés des festivals et des indépendants, et on a esquissé des solutions entre la répartition de la valeur, entre la réglementation, etc. Bien sûr qu'il y a aussi un travail à faire du côté des festivals de se questionner pour certainement trouver une autre manière de construire la relation au public, aux artistes, l'enrichir de la manière qu'ils souhaitent pour rendre l'expérience unique. Et oui, bien sûr qu'il y a aussi un aggiornamento à faire de la part des organisateurs pour être en phase avec ces évolutions, ces mutations du marché. Une partie de la réponse provient de nous, c'est sûr.
I mean, your question is good. I think there's two things. There's obviously the fan experience on site. There's a lot of French festivals, but you need to make sure that yours, you don't wait to get served. You can go to the toilet if you want. It's premiumly done because there's so many experiences that if you lose one fan one time, you're never getting back. So we have a huge responsibility to make sure that the experience on site is great, well produced. You spoke about Hellfest. The good thing with Hellfest is they have the site. Right, so 90% of us, we don't have the site. When I do Men's Square, it's a UNESCO classified citadel. I have 8 days to load in, 2 days to load out, and I have people living in the actual building. I cannot leave space there, so I need to make sure that my team, we promote it well within a super short time frame. Some of the festivals that you said have the land for the year, so they can actually have installation kept on the site, which helps also on the vibe. And also to another point, I think there's more and more fans wanting to see their bands in unique locations. We did shows at the Chantilly Castle, we did shows at the Chambord Castle, where you're taking the patrimoine that France have, which is insane, which is one of our grassroots, bringing those international or French artists there. They love it. They give a different vibe to the audience. But that's also a way to be creative, like finding new places, new location, iconic spots where you can have an artist tell his fans what he wants to do and get something new going on.
But I also want to say that we're old, the people sitting here.
How dare you?
Yeah, we are. And we look at experience as being only on site. And experience, we could all get really a lot better in starting the experience when we announce the event and building community, I think, the whole time. Because, my kids, they are, they build their community around shows in a totally different way than I do. They know what merch there is to buy. They know what songs are going to be played. They know fans from other countries that they're going to meet up at the show because they've been getting to know them on TikTok before. They arrange the cues and the all that stuff in a different way. And I think that's all happening without maybe us as organizers or promoters being into it too much, which is good because the fan community is important that they get to have their own stuff. But I think there's so much more to do with experience to start early and to build community digitally and the year leading up to the event.
We are out of time, but this guy's been dying to ask a question, so I have one very last quick question.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm gonna ask my question in French to be more complete. It's easier for me. So merci à tous et à toutes pour ces interventions. Moi j'ai une question. Le sujet des festivals qui vient et revient quand on parle un petit peu des urgences en ce moment dans l'industrie du spectacle vivant. On a parlé du rapport des publics avec les headliners qui évoluent constamment et qui ne fait que grossir. Je me suis pas présenté, mais je suis rédacteur pour Esprit Festivalier et la phase B et également booker à côté. Ce qu'on constate un petit peu là en ce début d'année, c'est que les festivals, notamment les gros festivals, annoncent un headliner par soir. On n'a plus vraiment, on a toujours eu des special days, des choses comme ça, mais là on a le Men's Square qui annonce 21 Pilot, Beauregard, Orelsan, Musila, Katy Perry, et on voit les festivals faire sold out leur passe un soir pour ces soirées-là. Est-ce que vous n'avez pas peur en tant qu'organisateur que les gens viennent finalement voir un concert avec une dizaine de premières parties? Alors certes vous avez des quotas, mais de ne promouvoir du coup que ces headliners-là pour la saison 2026 qui arrive.
I'm going to speak for Men's Square because obviously it's my baby. So the reality is, for example, on Men's Square, I will not put more than half of the capacity of a day on a single day ticket to always protect the weekend pass, the 2 days, whether they're Friday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, and the weekend pass. So you're right, on 21 Pilots, it was insanely fast. It was the biggest on sale on single day that we've ever had in 20 years. Faster than Depeche Mode and Radiohead, which was holding the record in 2017. The reality is those artists wanted to go out fast because they know the scheme that it's going to be announced in November. It was also an artist's mindset of, hey, we're going to do those festivals and potentially take a break and come back as a hard ticket in 2-3 years. As a festival, I won't say no to 21 Pilots wanting to go out. So yes, we're going to go one by one by one, and it's becoming more of a rhythm. Another thing is, the last years, many festivals, I won't name them, we were trying to have as much as bands to announce as one, and every time it pays the less because audience says too many names, they're just gonna see what they don't know, and they say, hey, I don't like it, fuck off, basically. When you focus on one band, one by one, it has kind of a headline effect, you're right, but you can also put a video and promote it in the best way than when you have a poster with 27 names and they get lost because they actually don't know the bands. So we're seeing a reason where it's better to go with the bigger names and not on the headlines because there's not only 21 Pilots, there's going to be more good names coming up. But then when you go with the smaller, middle tiers, smaller tiers, it's better to have a safer environment for them in January when you have 10, 15 names, when you can focus on them and push them properly. If you get them out with 21 Pilots and Real San, people will only focus on 2 names anyway. And then you lost the momentum with the audience. When you try to speak about those smaller acts in March, they're like, yeah, it was announced in November. I didn't see them at the time. I won't see them anyway, you know. So we're just seeing a better result of delaying the process of announcement and actually having more time and focus on the smaller names when we get out there with them.
Cool. We're all out of time. In fact, we're over time. It's a wrap, I'm being told. Thank you for coming along. Could you please thank my guests as well?